And the Lord said, the arrow of my wrath is bent, and it is nothing but the pleasure of the merciful Jesus that preserves you from the fiery damnation of hell. Now. Hey everybody, Mr. Scarlett here, and I wanted to talk about conversations between religious and not religious. Predominantly because they suck. And it makes sense why we're on completely different sides of the issue, but we spend so much time just talking way past each other that no movement's ever made in the conversation. So to have a better dialogue, what I've done is I've come up with 5 tips that the religious could use when talking to the atheists, which might help them out and may help their point get across a little bit easier. And maybe the atheists can learn a little bit more about themselves and what we tend to do and tend towards in conversation as well. Anyways, check them out. First things first, keep it relaxed. See, when people start talking about religion, passions really tend to fly. Like, fly out the window and hit somebody in the face kind of fly. And that makes sense, because your religion affects so much of everything you do. Everything you hope for, everything you believe, your political views, what you'll stand for. It's a big deal. And so when someone comes in and has this idea that you might be wrong, well, it's not so easy to hear. And the same thing is true for atheists. And now I should clarify, lest I get my head bitten off, atheism isn't a religion, sure. But atheism is a major component of one's worldview, at least. Especially in a country where religion kind of runs the show. When the underpinning response to the atheist worldview is that, you're just going to suffer and burn for eternal torment, eternal agony, with weeping, gritting, and gnashing of teeth, you might see how that might put them a little on the defensive too. A little bit. So I know that that's a very serious thing, mind-boggling as it is to me, a very real thing to many people in many religions, but atheists get that. Atheists know that according to most of the world, they're probably going to suffer for forever in somebody's hell, whether it's Jesus's, Allah's, Buddha's, or somebody's. So, that known, put that on the side. They get it. There are other issues you can talk about. Why you think that way, why I think that way. Let it just be a relaxed conversation of sharing of ideas. Learn from each other. And trust me, the conversation will go so much better, it'll be so much more pleasant, and your view will come across a lot more clear. The Bible, the source of Christian wisdom, truth, and an endless number of one-liners to use against the non-believer when you're out of ideas. See, that's the problem with using that book or any other sacred text to convince an atheist. It's that whole non-believing part. They don't believe in what you do in the first place. So when you're trying to quote scriptures at them, it sounds like you're not really giving them the time of day. You're not recognizing the perspective they're coming from and trying to adjust your conversation accordingly. When you try and say God's real because, wait a second, I got this verse that talks about how real God is, it doesn't really work on us. When you try and say that we need to change our ways because the Quran says that we're living in a terrible lifestyle and an affront to God, well, we don't believe those books in the first place. So if you want to convince us, start off differently. Get us to believe in that book first, then maybe you can use it. But otherwise, you got to pick a different frame of reference for your conversation. Enough said. One reason your good old atheist buddy might be getting kind of agitated with you, and seemingly unreasonably during a conversation, is because you might be using some of the same tired old religious tactics that we've heard 100,000 times. For instance, you might be employing the infamous Pascal's wager, which is, well, why not be religious? I mean, hey, at least if you're wrong, you're not going to lose anything. Look that one up. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's got its own whole page for it. Or you might be saying, oh, evolution's only just a theory. Well, that's a gross misunderstanding of what theory even means in the scientific context. Or you might, dare I say it, go into the whole, you can't disprove God though, you can't disprove that He's not there. Look it up. These things are present online, on YouTube, on Google, with tons and tons of rebuttals already. at least do your homework for us. And I know you don't know that we've already thought about these things, but it does kind of get on our nerves that we have to re-explain it 100,000 times. And that may be unreasonable for us. We should be more patient, and I'm totally okay with that idea. But it would certainly help the conversation go a little bit easier, and it'd make us feel a little bit more comfortable. We've definitely done our homework, because it takes a lot of thought to go so far against the grain to disbelieve what the majority of your society probably does believe. So if you would do us that same kind of favor, it would at least help out. Probably the biggest conversational death nail you could ring in a discussion with an atheist are the words, "You just gotta have faith." See, an atheist, at least an intentional atheist, is going to try and back up their ideas, at least any ideas that require an actual active effort to follow through with reason. And when a Christian or any other religious group says that you just have to have faith, that's kind of the abandoning of reason. In the least, it's the abandoning of our ability to converse with you any further. Because if you tell us we just have to have faith, or it's just a faith issue, there's really nothing we can say to that. I mean, think about it. What could your response be? Oh, okay, I get it. I just need to do that. It's just kind of like saying you just need to do something just because. The only other thing we could do is get into a long and complicated argument about faith and what it means with you, but try and spare us that misery. Faith is just not something that an atheist is going to agree with you on. It's nearly by definition against their own nature. So try and stick with the reasoning. Try and stick with why you think something rather than just you should think something, which is how faith is going to come across. I'm sure it's very tempting to think that the reason an atheist is the way he or she is because of maybe something that happened in their life or something about them other than just truth and thought and study. Like, maybe, they're an atheist because something bad, tragedy happened and they couldn't get over it. Or they're selfish, or they have issues with authority and God just doesn't really jive with them. Or, they don't like following those strict morality. They just want to be free, do what they want. It's tempting to think those things because you think that your views are correct and that studying will only make those views become more correct to the person. But that's not how we feel. Most of us, I would argue, would say that we became atheists because we thought about stuff, we studied, we researched, and we just came to the conclusion through logic that God didn't make sense. Now, it's perfectly okay if you can't buy into that and you really think that there's some ulterior motive that makes us an atheist. I can't just magically convince that away. But in conversation, if you're treating it with the presumption that there's one of those reasons or something else that's making us an atheist, other than just we came to that conclusion through thought and reason, it's a bit patronizing. So give us a break on that. At least when you're talking to us, give us the possibility that we came to that out of honest, good intent and honest, good thinking about ideas. It'll put us a little bit less off edge, and it'll make us feel like you actually care about hearing our ideas rather than just figuring out what's wrong with us and treating us just like a sick patient and that's it. We're people, and we have reasons for thinking the way we do. So give us that respect, please. Thank you. So that's all I've got for now. Hopefully these tips will help your conversations between the religious and the not so religious go just a little bit easier. And if you have some of your own tips or just ideas in general that would make the dialogue smoother, leave them in the comments for me. And feel free to thumbs up this video along the way and subscribe to your heart's content. But for now, this is Mr. Scarlet. I'm signing out.